The medical wing of the galactic Citadel hummed with the sterile, cold efficiency of a place that had seen countless patients and countless failures. Here, the galaxy's most advanced medics Zrin with their crystal technology, the Eula with their biogel treatments, the Erics with their neural reconstruction abilities, had gathered to deal with the aftermath of the largest interplanetary skirmish in 2 centuries. Thousands had been injured, and for the first time in years, the galaxy's top medics had found themselves at a loss. Patients lined the halls, many sedated, many far worse than that. In one particularly grim corner, the high-priority ward was filled with beings whose injuries had outstripped even the most advanced medical knowledge of the galaxy's top species. Limbs had been lost, organs irreparably damaged. Some had minds that had been shattered by psychic trauma that even the Eric's neural rewiring couldn't fix. The medics of the Citadel had tried everything: experimental surgeries, genetic therapies, advanced neuroaugmentation, and yet nothing worked. Dr. Thren of the Zrin was a tall figure, her crystalline eyes flickering faintly as she read the diagnostics of a patient who lay on a med gurney. He was an Ixal, a species with a naturally robust physiology, but even that couldn't save him now. His body had been ravaged by an explosion on the battlefield. The Zrin's advanced crystal healing techniques had managed to stop the bleeding, but not much else. He had been placed into stasis, like so many others, until a better solution could be found. "If we can't heal an Ixal, we're failing," Thren murmured to her assistant, Dr. Illis, who was from the Eulai species, his amphibious skin glistening with the soft sheen of the biogel that coated his body. Illis, for his part, looked weary. His large, black eyes blinked slowly as he reviewed the failure of his own biogel treatments on the wounded. "We've done everything possible," Thren Illis said quietly, his voice resonating like a soft pulse. "But these injuries are beyond repair. I doubt even the Zrin's crystal systems can regenerate that kind of damage." Thren's jaw tightened. "We're not giving up. We're the galaxy's top medics, aren't we? There has to be something we haven't considered." Before Illis could respond, a figure stepped into the room, moving with a casual confidence that didn't match the grim atmosphere. The man wore no official medical uniform, just a simple shirt and pants, with a rugged look that contrasted sharply against the sterile environment. His hair was messy, and his stubble suggested he hadn't seen the inside of a proper sleep pod in days. "Who let him in?" Thren snapped, turning to Illis. The man smirked slightly. "Name's Dr. Sam Carter," he said, giving her a brief nod. "Human. I'm here to help." Thren blinked. "You? Help? This is the Galactic Citadel, not some frontier outpost. We don't have time for primitive medical practices." Primitive Sam raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "Is that what they're saying about humans these days?" Illis looked as though he were about to interject, but Thren waved him off. "We're dealing with injuries that are beyond advanced medicine," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "Not even the most sophisticated treatments from the Zrin, the Eula, or the Erics can reverse what's been done to these soldiers." Sam gave a slow, thoughtful nod, glancing at the array of stasis chambers. "I've heard," he said, his voice softening a little. "That's why I'm here. To see if maybe there's something human medicine can do that hasn't been tried yet." Thren bit back a sharp retort. Humans were new to the galactic stage, having only been part of the Interspecies Alliance for a few decades. They were hardy, sure, survivors, resilient in battle. But they were medically primitive, relying on techniques that were centuries behind the cutting-edge technology of the Citadel's top races. "What exactly do you think you can do?" Illis asked, stepping forward, his curiosity piqued despite himself. Sam shrugged, glancing at the stasis chambers. "I don't know yet, but I'd like to take a look. Let me review the patients. Maybe there's something you missed. Something that doesn't rely on tech." Thren folded her arms. "This is a waste of time." Sam met her gaze evenly. "Maybe, but these soldiers deserve every option, even the ones you think are beneath you." There was a long silence as Thren debated whether to throw him out. But there was something about the human's calm persistence, his steady confidence, and the truth was, they were out of options. "Fine," she said at last. "You can examine one of the patients. But if you fail, you leave. Sam smiled faintly. Deal. The first patient Sam was given access to was a Krovan warrior, a towering figure with dark red scales and 4 powerful arms. His injuries were catastrophic. His entire lower body had been shredded by shrapnel, and his vital organs were being sustained only by the Citadel's life support systems. Sam stood over the patient, his brow furrowed in concentration as he studied the medical scans. Thren and Illis watched from a distance, skeptical but curious. I see what happened, Sam said after a long silence. His body's in stasis, but the regeneration tech isn't doing much. You're trying to rebuild tissue at a molecular level with your crystal resonance, right? That's correct, Thren replied, her voice clipped. But the extent of the damage is beyond crystal resonance. Sam finished for her, nodding. Yeah, I get that. But here's the thing, sometimes you can't just rely on molecular regeneration. Sometimes the body's own healing mechanisms need a kickstart. Illis frowned. A kickstart? Yes, Sam said, setting aside the medical scanner and crouching down next to the patient. See, human medicine learned a long time ago that the body has natural repair systems. You just have to trigger them. The Krovan physiology isn't all that different from humans in terms of immune response. If we can amplify that natural healing response. Thren shook her head. We've already tried stimulating immune responses, but the damage is too extensive. Sam glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Not like this, you haven't. He pulled a small, unassuming case from his pack, opening it to reveal several vials filled with a strange, golden liquid. This is a serum developed back on Earth. It's based on human stem cells, engineered to adapt to alien physiology. It promotes rapid cellular regeneration by enhancing the body's natural processes. Illis blinked, fascinated despite his reservations. Stem cells? But that's ancient tech, Sam said, grinning. Yeah, maybe. But this stuff works. We've used it in war zones where even the best tech couldn't save people. Sometimes the old methods have to work with the new. Thren's skepticism was palpable, but she didn't stop him as Sam injected the serum into the Krovan's bloodstream, carefully monitoring the patient's vitals as he did. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Krovan's vital signs began to change. Subtle at first, slight increases in blood pressure, more steady neural activity. But soon, the changes became more pronounced. The damaged tissues in his lower body, which had been stagnating under the Citadel's regeneration tech, started to regenerate. Not in the same way as the crystal resonance, but in a more organic, natural way. The serum was stimulating the Krovan's immune system, activating cells that had been dormant, pushing the body to heal itself. Illis stepped forward, eyes wide. It's working. Thren stared, her crystalline eyes narrowing as she studied the data on her handheld device. Impossible. Sam just smiled. Not impossible. Just different. Word of the Krovan's recovery spread through the Citadel like wildfire. The top medics, who had spent weeks battling their own frustrations and failures, were suddenly talking about the human doctor who had used primitive techniques to do what the galaxy's most advanced technology couldn't. It wasn't long before Sam found himself standing in front of several of the galaxy's top medical minds, including Dr. Zalan, the Eric specialist in neural regeneration. This is a temporary solution, Zalan said, his insectoid eyes blinking rapidly as he stared down at Sam. The Krovan's recovery is impressive, but stem cell serums can't possibly repair the neural damage we've seen in our patients. Sam leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying the group. You're right, my serum isn't going to fix everything. But there are other ways. You've been relying too much on tech, sometimes the body has to take control. Dr. Ayla, a pale blue-skinned Cree with telepathic abilities, raised her hand. We've been trying to repair psychic trauma in our patients who suffered mental injuries during the battle, but their minds are shattered beyond what our neural reconstruction can manage. Their brains simply can't be rewired without risking further damage. Sam looked thoughtful for a moment. Telepathic species. Right, you're using neural rewiring to try to stitch the pieces of their minds back together, but you're still relying on external tech. Ayla frowned. What other option do we have? Sam tapped his chin. On Earth, we've treated trauma patients veterans, people with PTSD using sensory deprivation and neural reconnection therapy. The brain is a powerful thing, but sometimes it needs to be guided, not forced. Thren, who had been silent throughout the meeting, spoke up. You think you can heal psychic trauma? The Erics have been trying for decades, and they're the galaxy's leading experts on neural regeneration. I'm not saying I can fix it all, Sam replied, his voice calm, but I think I can help. Ayla exchanged a glance with Zalan, her pale eyes narrowing. I want to see this. We have a patient, one of the Drak, a species with a deeply sensitive psychic network. His mind was fractured in the battle, and nothing we've tried has even come close to helping. Sam nodded. Take me to him. The Drak patient was a fragile, ethereal figure, his body pale and gaunt beneath the med lights. His psychic network had been shattered during the battle, leaving him in a semi-catatonic state. Sam stood beside Ayla, Zalan, and Thren, who all watched with a mixture of skepticism and morbid curiosity. I've seen this before, Sam said quietly. Back on Earth, we had soldiers come back from combat with their minds in pieces. They were overwhelmed by trauma, by pain. The trick isn't to force the mind to heal. You have to guide it. The brain has natural pathways for recovery, but when those pathways are broken... He trailed off, reaching into his pack once more. This time, he pulled out a small, unassuming device. It looked nothing like the advanced technology of the Citadel. It was rudimentary by comparison, almost archaic. A small band, with simple electrodes and a calming light that pulsed rhythmically. What is that? Ayla asked, her voice thick with doubt. Human-made neural reconnection device, Sam explained, moving toward the Drak. It's a sensory reset tool. It helps patients who are trapped in trauma to reestablish neural connections by putting them in a deeply relaxed state. You combine it with controlled stimuli, and it gives the brain a chance to find its own way out of the damage. Thren's eyebrows rose in disbelief. That looks ancient. How do you expect it to work on a mind as complex as the Drak's? Sam didn't respond immediately. Instead, he gently placed the device on the Drak's head, adjusting the settings as the soft pulsing light began to glow. It might look simple, he said, but sometimes simplicity is what's needed. When the mind is overloaded with external inputs like your tech, it shuts down. This device quiets the noise. The room was silent, the skepticism palpable as they watched Sam work. The soft pulses of the light began to sync with the Drak's breathing, the electrodes sending subtle, calming signals into the fractured mind. Minutes passed. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the Drak's fingers twitched. Zalan leaned forward, his insectoid eyes narrowing in surprise. What? The Drak's breathing grew more steady, his body relaxing in a way it hadn't in weeks. The neural scans that had shown nothing but chaos for so long began to display patterns still broken, but slowly reassembling themselves. Sam's voice was soft. The mind heals itself, given time and the right conditions. You just have to be patient. The following days were nothing short of miraculous. Patients who had been written off as lost causes began to show signs of recovery. The Kroven's natural regeneration accelerated, and he was able to walk again within days. The Drak, whose mind had been shattered beyond repair, slowly regained fragments of his consciousness, thanks to Sam's neural reconnection therapy. The medics of the Citadel, once dismissive of the human doctor's methods, now found themselves watching him closely, studying his techniques with an intensity that bordered on reverence. Sam's approach was unconventional, mixing human stem cell serums, sensory reset devices, and techniques that had been all but forgotten in the age of advanced technology. But it worked. Thren, who had been the most skeptical, now stood in awe as she watched Sam treat yet another patient, this time a Zalari, whose skeletal structure had been decimated by a plasma blast. You're rewriting the rules of medicine, she said, her voice tinged with respect. You're making us rethink everything we thought we knew. Sam chuckled softly, adjusting the bandages on the Zalari. Not really. I'm just reminding you of something old. Thren tilted her head, her crystalline eyes flickering in the med light. And what's that? that any body has power, more than you realize. You can't always rely on tech to do the healing for you. Sometimes you just need to give it the tools to heal itself. She looked down at the patient, then back at Sam. You've done more here in a week than we've managed in months. Just doing my part, Sam said, smiling faintly. Humans aren't so bad at this healing thing. Thren laughed, a rare sound. No, Dr. Carter, it seems you're not. And for the first time in her career, Dr. Thren, one of the galaxy's top medics, found herself learning from a species she had once considered primitive. The Citadel's most advanced medics had given up on the wounded, but a human armed with little more than ingenuity and hope had healed them. In the quiet halls of the galactic Citadel, the lessons learned that day would change the course of medicine forever. The recovery ward of the galactic Citadel had transformed over the last several weeks. Where once rows of stasis pods hummed in silence, now the sound of life filled the air's soft conversations, the beeping of monitors tracking improving vitals, the rhythmic tapping of footsteps as medics moved between patients, administering care. Soldiers and civilians alike, who had been written off as too far gone to save, were now regaining strength, their bodies and minds slowly healing. Dr. Thren stood near one of the large windows overlooking the vibrant heart of the Citadel, her crystalline eyes reflecting the soft glow of the artificial lights below. For the first time in months, she felt something akin to hope. The galaxy's finest medical minds had been humbled by their inability to treat the wounded, but that humility had given way to something greater, a desire to learn from the unlikeliest of teachers. Behind her, she could hear Sam Carter's voice, calm and steady as he explained a treatment to a group of Citadel medics. She smiled softly to herself. It was remarkable, really. The human had shown up in their time of failure, armed with nothing but the primitive methods of a species the galaxy had underestimated, and he had turned everything they knew about medicine on its head. Thren turned away from the window, moving towards Sam and the group he was instructing. Sam was bent over a patient, a Tarian whose multiple fractures had been considered irreversible by the Citadel's medics, even with their advanced bone regeneration technology. But with Sam's stem cell serum and careful rehabilitation techniques, the patient was slowly but steadily regaining the use of his limbs. The key, Sam was saying, adjusting the positioning of the patient's arm, is patience. You can't rush recovery, no matter how advanced the tech is. Sometimes you need to let the body do the work at its own pace. These fractures, they need to set in stages, not all at once. Pushing too hard too fast leads to relapse. The medics, a mix of Zrin, Ula, Erix, and Kriai, nodded attentively, absorbing his every word. Sam might not have had the most advanced tools at his disposal, but his deep understanding of the natural healing process was undeniable. More than that, his methods were yielding results none of them had expected. As Sam finished his explanation, he glanced up, noticing Thren approaching. He smiled. Dr. Thren, you should join us. We're talking about how to manage recovery without overwhelming the body with external stimuli. Thren crossed her arms, shaking her head with an amused look. I'm not sure I have much to teach here, Dr. Carter. I've been too busy trying to keep up with your unconventional methods. Sam's smile widened. I wouldn't call them unconventional, just different. Every species has a different approach to healing, but it's all about understanding the body's language, no matter what form it takes. One of the younger medics, a Cry with pale blue skin, raised her hand tentatively. Dr. Carter, your methods, what you've shown us with the stem cell serums and sensory reset devices, do you think they could be adapted for long-term care? Could we integrate these approaches into our medical systems? Sam rubbed the back of his neck, glancing at Thren before he answered. Honestly, I don't see why not. The tech here at the Citadel is incredible. But sometimes it's too advanced for its own good. It skips over the basics, the simple things that we humans had to rely on for centuries. What I've been using here, it's just a reminder that even the most advanced systems still need a foundation. If you build that into your protocols, it'll give patients a better chance. Thren stepped forward, adding her voice to the conversation. What Dr. Carter is saying is true. We've become too dependent on technology doing the work for us. We've lost sight of the body's own ability to recover, to heal itself. Integrating these methods could fundamentally change how we practice medicine here. The group of medics looked at each other, nodding thoughtfully. The shift in mindset was palpable. Where once they had viewed Sam's techniques as primitive, they now saw them as a necessary complement to their own advancements. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Zalan and Dr. Ayla. The Erics and Kree medics approached with brisk steps, their expressions serious but not hostile. Thren raised an eyebrow, wondering what had brought them here so suddenly. Dr. Carter Zalan said, his insectoid eyes glinting in the low light. "We've been monitoring the Drak patient you treated with your neural reconnection therapy." Sam's expression tightened slightly. Is something wrong? Ayla shook her head, her telepathic voice reaching their minds. No, quite the opposite. We've never seen anything like it. The patient's neural pathways have been re-established at a rate far beyond what our technology could manage. He's regaining memories, cognitive function. He even recognized one of his family members this morning. The weight of her words hit everyone at once. The Drak's psychic trauma had been thought to be beyond repair, yet here he was, making a recovery no one had believed possible. Sam let out a breath, his shoulders relaxing. That's good to hear. It's more than good, Zalan said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. It's astonishing. The Erics have been studying neural regeneration for centuries, and yet you without any of our advanced tools managed to do what we could not. Sam shifted uncomfortably under the weight of their praise. I just used what I knew. Nothing special. It is special, Thren interjected, her voice firm. What you've done here has changed everything, and it's time you started seeing that. Sam chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't come here to change the way the galaxy practices medicine. I just wanted to help. And help you did, Ayla said, her telepathic voice warm. The Citadel owes you a great debt. Before Sam could respond, a new voice joined the conversation, gruff, commanding and tinged with an edge of authority. I see the rumors were true. Everyone turned to see Commander Veclan, a towering figure with dark green skin and a row of sharp ridges down his spine, enter the ward. He was flanked by two other officers, both bearing the insignia of the Galactic Council. His presence was enough to draw immediate attention from the medics, who instinctively straightened under his gaze. Sam eyed him warily. And you are? Commander Veclan, the man replied, his voice like gravel. I've been sent by the Galactic Council to assess the situation here. They've heard reports of unexpected recoveries. Thren stepped forward, her crystalline eyes narrowing. The unexpected recoveries are thanks to Dr. Carter. He's the one who turned this around. Veclan's gaze flickered to Sam, his expression unreadable. A human doctor, healing the galaxy's top soldiers when our finest medics failed. It's caused quite a stir. Sam crossed his arms. I didn't come here to stir things up. I came to help your wounded. Veclan studied him for a long moment before speaking again. The council is impressed, Dr. Carter. They've asked me to convey their interest in your methods. Sam's expression tightened. I'm not here to impress anyone. These methods aren't some miracle cure, they're just another way to treat patients. If the council wants to learn from that, fine. But I'm not selling out what we've done here. The commander raised an eyebrow. The council isn't asking for your loyalty. They're asking for your knowledge. What you've done, your methods could change the future of galactic medicine. They're willing to invest in that. Sam's jaw clenched slightly, but before he could respond, Thren placed a hand on his arm, her voice soft but firm. Sam, this could be bigger than you realize. What you've done here doesn't just affect this Citadel. It could save lives across the galaxy. Don't turn away from that. Sam met her gaze, his expression conflicted. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Finally, he let out a slow sigh. All right, I'll share what I know, but on one condition. Veclan's eyes narrowed. And what's that? Sam's expression hardened. I don't want this becoming some galactic weapon. These techniques, these treatments, they're meant to heal, not be weaponized. I've seen enough war to know what happens when people get greedy with power." The commander regarded him silently, and then, to everyone's surprise, he nodded. "Agreed. The Council will ensure that these methods are used for medical purposes only." Sam relaxed slightly, though his eyes still held a wary edge. "Good. Then we've got a deal." Over the next few weeks, Sam's methods were integrated into the Citadel's medical protocols. Medics from across the galaxy arrived to study the human doctor's techniques, eager to learn from the man who had defied the odds. The Council's interest grew, but Sam remained firm in his commitment to keep the focus on healing, not on power. The Citadel's recovery ward, once a place of despair, became a symbol of hope, a place where even the most grievous wounds could be healed, where minds could be mended, and where the body's own power to recover was valued as much as any advanced technology. Sam became something of a legend, not just for his unconventional methods, but for his belief that even in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations and miraculous tech, there was still something to be said for the basics, for patience, for letting the body heal itself. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the Citadel's lights cast long shadows across the halls, Sam stood by the window overlooking the bustling medical facility. Thren approached quietly, her crystalline form glowing softly in the dim light. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" she asked, her voice gentle. Sam nodded. "Yeah, I've taught what I can. It's time for me to head back to Earth." Thren smiled faintly. "You've changed everything here, you know. The galaxy won't forget what you've done." He shrugged, though there was a hint of a smile on his face. "I didn't do anything special. Just reminded everyone that healing doesn't always come from a machine." Thren's smile grew. Sometimes the simplest truths are the hardest to remember. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the medics below move between patients, their methods a blend of the old and the new. Finally, Thren spoke again, her voice soft. "Thank you, Sam." He glanced at her, his expression warm. "For what?" "For showing us that even the most advanced medics in the galaxy can still learn something." Sam chuckled, shaking his head. "Anytime, Dr. Thren." And with that, the human doctor who had healed the galaxy's wounded in ways no one thought possible walked out of the Citadel, leaving behind a legacy that would reshape medicine across the stars for generations to come. In the end, the galaxy's top medics had given up on the wounded, but a human had healed them.